I'm Dave Hall, and on March 11th, 1979, it was an extremely cold day in Chicago. When the day began, I knew little about Jesus and nothing about Luis Palau. My wife had invited me to come to church, and I joined her, and I was terribly disappointed to hear that it was an Argentinian evangelist who was going to speak that day. But when Luis began to speak, it was as if he was there only for me. As he talked about the fact that there were people who were happy on the outside and crying on the inside. And he said, if that's your circumstance, ask the God of all comfort, the Father of all mercies, to come into your situation and change you, and he will. And on that day he did. And on that day my life was totally transformed. I had no idea I'd ever hear from Luis again, but 6 or 7 years later he called and asked me to be on his board. And then 2 years after that, he invited me to be chairman, a position I held for 30 years. I served with some wonderful men on that board, and it was a phenomenal experience. In that time, I had an opportunity to travel with Luis around the world and to see him in good situations and in bad situations, but in all of them. He was not focused on his circumstances. He was focused on Jesus and on heaven. And that helped me understand how my life should be lived too. I think about the most important thing or interesting thing about him, I recall, is how he related to people. He could speak to women, he could speak to men, to business people, to housewives, to teens, and they all thought he was speaking directly to them because he understood them, and he did. Well, one year, I live in Phoenix, and each year we had an outreach around the Phoenix Open. And one year we couldn't find a professional golfer, man or woman, that was going to play in that tournament that would be in Phoenix at that time. And so I said, well, Luis Palau's coming to spend some time with me. I'm sure he would be happy to take this position. So Luis came, and for 40 minutes, he humiliated golfers because he had no respect for golf or for golfers. But he humiliated the golfers and the sport. And yet, at the end, many of those people came to Christ because even though he didn't understand and appreciate golf, he understood the human condition, that which we all share. And at the end, so many people came to Jesus, and so many people came to speak to Luis because they were moved by what he had to say. That's the man I knew. That's the man when I woke up on March 11th, 2021, the 42nd anniversary of my conversion to Jesus. I thought about Luis, and I thought, I hope he doesn't die this day, only to find out that that had been the day that he'd gone to be with the Lord. How significant it was that for me, that the day that I came to know Jesus was the day that Luis came into his presence. I love you, Luis. I love your family.